Howdy, every listener and viewer and what have you, believer, non-believer, people who don't even know what I'm talking about. This is going to be a series video because it's just going to be way too much info to put into one video. I don't know, I'll probably try and keep them around 20 or 30 minutes, but I got a ton of scripture to run through. This is going to be probably the most structured thing I've done. I have 2 pages of notes to run through. And first, I just want to give a little backstory as to, I guess, my own life and who I am and what brought me to I would call it the cataclysmic point in my life where God had prepped me for 23 years to finally, or it would be 22 years to finally believe the truth of salvation of all through the life, death, resurrection, and vivification of Jesus Christ, and then from there on the judgment that he will have over humanity and even the second death. So my name is Seth Fallenkamp. I'm 23. I live in Des Moines, Iowa. I've lived in Iowa for 20 years. When I was 3 years old, I was born in Minneapolis when I was 3. Just kidding. When I was 3, my parents moved back to Iowa because it's where they're from. They wanted to be closer to family. They went up there because my dad wanted to be closer to his brother who had been in a car accident and become a paraplegic, and it was his search for God, really, and that's what brought my parents into a couple of different faiths, the final one being Christianity, and they had even unknowingly joined a cult, which Christianity is a cult, but they had joined like a legitimate, like in-your-face cult. But there were these 2 people, this husband and wife, that had rescued them out of that. And so I grew up in the Christian belief system up until I was about 12 or 13. My dad had finally gotten around to believing the salvation of all, or kind of like diving into that and being like, well, no one ever talks about these scriptures. So he was pretty much getting exiled from churches around our town. In our small little town of 1,200 people, there was 7 churches, I believe. So we had hit just about every single one of them. And through high school, I went to a youth group because my friends were there, and I've just always desired to seek out God. I've always kind of been known as the class clown. I've been always known as the kid who has to have the last word, as my mom would say. And everything was a joke to me. I could make fun of anybody. I could make fun of myself. I could do whatever, say whatever, and I just thought it was all hunky-dory, okay. And so I had kind of gotten tied into this youth group, and I had done a lot of stupid shit through my young life. I had been arrested for stealing in 8th grade. I was stealing out of cars because it was just a thrill, and there was some kid who was influencing me to do it, and me and my brother, we got into a heap of trouble with the law. I got arrested, not arrested, I got in trouble at church camp in 7th grade for smoking weed for the first time, and let me tell you, that was fucking awesome. We ended up getting surprised with neon dodgeball after we had smoked. So I'm there playing dodgeball. Everything's in slow motion. The lights are going crazy, and my 6'4" youth group leader popped up over a hay bale and throws a dodgeball, smokes me in the face. And you can imagine being high in 7th grade and a dodgeball being thrown by a 6'4" man, just going. It was awesome. It was sweet. It's funny. I was always the church kid. I was always someone who I've always known scripture. I've always known stories. I've always known biblical things. I've always been able to identify all that stuff. But I've always been on the opposite side of the spectrum too, where it's super obvious to me now that what Paul says, where the law came so that sin would increase, and grace super exceeds the sin, or where sin increases, grace super exceeds. That's been prevalent through all the ways that I should have died growing up, like all the insane, stupid stuff I did that I kept hidden from everybody. Like my friends' parents would not tell my parents a lot of stuff just because they were like, well, then he's not going to be able to come over here because they're strict and Christian, and they're like, my parents are awesome. They've always been incredible, but we just grew up in such a strict household. And that's because my dad was, trying to hold it all together and be the foundation of the house. And that's just what it was, us three kids, my older brother and my younger sister, we all just struggled with just self-deprecating thoughts. Like my sister has been through shit that I can't even imagine, and she is better. She says she's better off just not telling us. She doesn't want to burden her family with some of the stuff she's been through, and we know some of it. It's just, that's her journey. She believes the truth of the salvation of all. She just doesn't want to dive into it, and that is completely fine. That's the beauty of this truth, is this is the only thing I ever think about. This is the only thing that ever runs through my head. And she might think of it, I don't know, as much as she does, but she's got two sons, two nephews who are just adorable, and I love them. And they're both like little miracle babies in a way, because they were like her first son. He's 3.5 now, over 3.5, and he was born a month and a half early, premature. And then her other son isn't even supposed to be born until the end of January this month, and he was born 2 months ago. So he's 3 months premature, and now he's over like 6 pounds now. It's just fucking incredible the way that these kids are just keeping her going, because I think without her kids she wouldn't have much hope at all. And thank God we don't have to consider what life would be like alternatively. And so the big pivotal thing that happened in my life, I know there was like a lot of stupid, like me just being mischievous and whatnot, but a big thing that happened was, I guess you could say all throughout my life, I've had a very fucked up idea of sexuality. And one, growing up in a Christian household, always being told like, you need to marry a Christian girl, you can't do anything until you're married, all this and that kind of stuff. From a very young age, my parents would tell us this stuff, and it's like, you two didn't do that, we know that. And my mom would be like, well, we knew it was immoral to sleep in the same bed, so your dad would sleep on the couch. And I'm like, bitch, I knew you was sleeping around, it's okay. Like, I love my mom, I'm just saying bitch because, well, she my bitch, she my girl. I love my parents, we're close as fuck. And what I'm about to tell you is a huge reason as to why we are so close. I was always pretty honest with them, when I wasn't lying to them. And so when I was 16, I was like, I guess the best way to say it was I was groomed for a couple of years by a teacher of mine. He was an awesome dude, it seemed. He was loving and caring and really wanted to get to know me and my friend. And there's a couple other kids in the community that this happened to. But he had molested me and my friend at the same time when I was 16. And just before this, like a week before that, I had sex with my girlfriend. I had lost my virginity. And then this happens where I get molested. And as bad as it was, I blocked it out for like 2 years. Like I didn't even think about it for 2 years. God had just wiped it from my memory. I would have 3 or 4 instances where it came to mind. So I had sex with my girlfriend, I got molested, and then had sex with her again, and immediately after the second time we had sex, I broke up with her, and I didn't know why I was breaking up with her. Like, I couldn't tie it to being molested, because I was in shock for like 2 years, pretty much. And so 2 years later comes along, it's my senior year of high school, playing football on a super kick-ass football team. Like, I didn't even really like sports. I just did it because I was in a small town, and that's what you do with your friends, is you support them, because I had no identity my whole life. I was always waiting for people to laugh at my joke, or I was waiting to say some deep thing that was welling up inside me where people could be like, oh, like, this kid, he gets it, like, whatever it is, you know, where this world is just so vague and so mysterious when it comes to success and what you are supposed to be. And that's truly why I have my identity in Christ, is because this world just has no idea what identity really is. They condemn the people who are successful, and the people who are unsuccessful try to be successful by either running their mouth or keeping quiet up until they're sitting on gold bars, you know, like their golden throne. It's like, what the fuck is this life? I didn't know. I never knew. And so as soon as I came out about being molested 2 years afterward, I was at a church camp, and the speaker at that camp, he told his story about when he was like, I think he was like 10 years old, and he got molested by an older kid, like a 13 or 14-year-old kid. And so it just, as soon as he told his story, my brain, it was like the floodgates opened and just washed in all the memories that I had forgotten about. Every detail of that night where I was molested just flooded into my brain, and I was ecstatic to have this weight off my chest. It was, I always told people, especially in a religious sense, it was like, because in religion you are purifying yourself. You're trying to do everything you can to become righteous, and which is impossible. But through the process of my 18-year-old mind, I'm going into senior year, and I'm on this super kick-ass football team. We went undefeated up until our second playoff game. I ended up getting a high ankle sprain, like in like week 9 against a super shitty team. Some kid blindsided me and hit me in the back of the head, and then my ankle rolled. I was like, I don't know how that happened, but cool. So I was already extremely depressed. Like, as soon as I came out about this amazing truth, it's like Satan at that church was like, you're free now. Here's depression. And I was just like, God fucking damn it. And every part of me, it just told me I deserved it. Like, I needed to feel that. Like, and ironically enough, I did need to feel it. Like, it was God's will that I would feel so shitty for the next 3 years of my life. So I was 18, and I didn't get out of depression until I was 21, I think. And through this whole time, I had immense anxiety, and that didn't go away up until I came into the belief of salvation of all. Like, as soon as that happened, it just washed away. Everything that I had ever worried about just went away. And if you listen to my last video, I said how I would walk into a place and I would feel like everyone knew who I was. And it wasn't a positive thing. It was like everyone knew the worst shit about me. Like, I would meet complete strangers and I would tell them that I was molested. 2, 3, 4, 5 years after the fact. Like, it was on my mind all the time. If you are listening to this video and you are a believer in the salvation of all and the truth of Jesus Christ and his faith and his work on this earth and all that, and you know that never stops running through your mind, me being a victim of child molestation was on my mind 24/7, all the time. Like, I always felt like I was just the biggest idiot in the room, and I cried all the time. I was super emotional. I was tying myself so deeply to my emotions because I felt like if I wasn't feeling anything, then I wasn't real. Like I wasn't worth loving. Like I wasn't authenticated. Like I was just another person in the room. And it's like I needed to separate myself from everyone else by knowing that I was different because I had this negative thing in my life. And at the same time, I was doing counseling like once a week. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it at all. And the state had provided a counselor. It's a Crisis Intervention Services in Oskaloosa, Iowa. Michelle Friesen. She is the shit. She would go on lunch dates with me. Senior year, I would go to counseling, I think like 3 or 4 times a week. And people would ask me where I was, or people would ask my sister where I was, or my cousin Buki. He was living with us my senior year. We were both seniors, and I love that kid. He was suicidal through his life for a good portion, and I never understood it until I experienced depression for myself. I never understood what it was like to be depressed, and there was nothing I could do. There was nothing I could say or even utter. Like the thoughts didn't even make sense. I felt unsafe around everybody. My entire senior year was this amazing year of, I was on an amazing sports team. I was considered to be like, one of the better kids in my class, I guess. I don't know. I was always kind of seen as like a different kind of thinker. And for me, I always felt like just the biggest piece of shit in every room. Like I was the dog shit that someone stepped in before they walked into the classroom. And I isolated myself junior year for religious reasons in a way that I was just trying to cut myself off from everybody because I just didn't want to partake in what everyone else was doing. I had been to parties, I had smoked weed, I had drank, I'd done all that growing up. And I mean, I still do it now, but that's because I have the relief of who I am. But the person that I am now is a testament and a continual, like, finishing product of all the bullshit that I faced growing up. And I don't think it's any worse than anything that anyone else has ever gone through, because I think we all have, as humans, a threshold that God has already created, and then he pushes us up against it. And it's like grating cheese. You start out as this big block of cheese, and who wants to eat a block of cheese? So you start grating it, and everyone loves shredded cheese. It's easier to work with. It goes great. You can sprinkle it on anything. You can just shove a whole handful in your mouth, but you can't shove a block of cheese in your mouth. What are you doing? So God puts us through this process to be the most delicious plate of nachos that you've ever seen in your life. But he can't just, melt a thing of a block of cheese over some tortilla chips and call it good. He's got to run you through the metal ringer. And I got into some music that was it's a band called Silent Planet. I'll just show you the tattoo that I have. And this is Phineas. These are some homies of mine. They're funny enough, they're both, I guess, I want to say Christian based, but they're really cool dudes. I love them. I don't really listen to them anymore just because they don't even come across my shuffle. But this tattoo was the first tattoo I got, and this slash in the back and the circle is the Silent Planet logo. And it's funny how this tattoo has changed meanings over time. So the 7 right here, that has to do with the 7 kids, including myself, that came forward about being molested by this teacher. The wick is an S for my initial, and there's 7 light flickers that have to do with us kids. And the song that I based that tattoo off of is called First Father. by Silent Planet, and it's on an album of theirs called Everything Was Sound. And they're a heavy band, and the song is talking about grief. It's talking about the loss of life and what happens afterward. And every time that song would come on, I would just bawl my eyes out. Like, it's when I felt alive, was when I was at my worst. Other than that, I pretty much just felt like a fake. I felt like a shell. I felt like I wasn't even worth talking to, and yet all I wanted to do was make sure everyone else was okay. That I got that trait from my mom, and she's doing a phenomenal job at coming out of that, especially with her kids growing up and her realizing, holy shit, like, I can't make everyone happy. I can't be in control of everyone else's joy. And I myself did the same thing. I would right before I was made to believe the truth that I do now, I was smoking weed with some friends, and at this point when I was smoking weed, anytime I would smoke, I would start tripping balls. Like, the room would start to spin, and I would see things that were, like, I would get sucked into the light. Like, the light bulb that's in front of my eyes would pull me into it. And a lot of this video is gonna have to be about acid and mushrooms that I had taken, and just the negative relationships that I had around those times in my life. But I was smoking weed with two of my childhood friends, and one of them kind of made like a gay joke, or like a dick sucking joke or something like that, and they could see that it obviously affected me, and I didn't think it would affect me. I'm the kind of person who says any kind of joke, who thinks anything is funny, especially now that I have the peace of Christ. But back then, I would just say things that were just so out there. People would be like, what the fuck, Seth? Like, that is fucked up, dude. And like, I didn't really think I was very impacted by what he said, but I could feel it. Like, I could feel like something was, like, someone just wrapped their arms around me and just like squeezed my chest. And I was just like, and he was like, see, Seth, I can see that you're still uncomfortable with this, and it's been 6 years since that happened. And I was just like, I don't want it to affect me. I'm tired of it affecting me. I don't think that it does, and then when it does, I hate it. And I was just telling them how I could see the tripping lights, and I was describing it to them, and I don't think that was a positive thing. I think that was I think that was a demonic influence for sure. At that point, I'm pretty sure I was demonically possessed, and that's because of the acid and mushrooms that I had done. And I'll tell you more about that after this. But so I had described to them, this is what I thought life was like. Imagine that everyone that you love, everyone that's in pain, everyone that can't see the future and know that it's there and have hope, is underwater in the ocean. And me, I keep bobbing up. Like, here's the surface, I keep bobbing up just enough to see that there is horizon and that there is a sun and there is a sunset, and then I get pulled back down. Someone's yanking on my leg. That's what it felt like. That's what my life felt like. Like, I went up just to go back down and tell them, hey, there is something, there's hope. I didn't know what it was. I had no idea what this hope was. I just knew it was there. Like, I was right on the verge of coming into this belief when this was happening. This was like maybe a month before, and I still had my long hair. I had long hair down to here. I was hippie scum. I didn't shower more than I showered like every 5 days or something like that. Like, I didn't give a fuck about myself. I said, my whole life was this, just to everyone. It was, fuck you, I love you, and I hope you're okay, but fuck you, because fuck me, really, is what it was. And so I kept telling them, I was like, it's like I'm the one who has to tell everyone that it's gonna be okay, because I'm the one who's able to come above the surface and see that it's okay, and everyone else just keeps pulling me down. And you can't communicate underwater. You can't even breathe. It's just bubbles and just distorted vision, and all you know is chaos. The water is chaos. The ocean is chaos. Why do you think the foolish man built his house on the sand and the wise man built his house on the rocks? And the beauty of it all is, and that's a Jewish parable. The thing about it is God places you on the rock, and the rock is Christ. So let's go back a couple years. I had connected with a friend. She had horrible upbringing where she was raped nonstop by her older half brother or something like that growing up, and she didn't even have memories from 12 years old and younger. She had a complete blackout pretty much her entire childhood. And I love this girl. I still love this girl, and she had been through the ringer, and I would see her every so often. I met her when I was like 16 and maybe 15, and her grandparents lived in a town that was like 15 minutes away from my hometown, and she wasn't from the area, she was from the south. And she would like be my girl when she came up to Iowa, and then when she left, it's like I didn't exist. And I realized that I would end up doing that to a lot of my relationships, where she just cut me out, and it's like I didn't exist, even though when we were together it was like the greatest connection. And so I went down to Arkansas to visit her, and her boyfriend had been raped by his father growing up, and so he had a whole handbasket of just issues, and so we were three extremely damaged people who just connected and loved each other. And this was 5 years after the fact that she had cut me out completely. I would get like Snapchats or messages from her that would just be like, "Hey, I'm sorry," and it would just be like her cutting herself in her bathtub. And I would just be like, I'd respond, and then I'd just be like, why am I responding? She's not gonna respond back. And she never would. It would just always be like glimpses of where she's at, and it was always worse than it was before. And so the Christian religion really instilled in me that it was my fault that these people weren't doing better, that it was up to me to save them. And I took that into every relationship that I ever had in my entire life, up until being made to believe what I do now, is that it was on me that these people were not doing good. It was my fault that they didn't love themselves, even though I didn't love myself either. Like, I've only thought that I've loved myself for maybe the past 2 or 3 years, maybe 2 years, I'd say. And that's through living in horrible houses and having backstabbing friends that I would take a bullet for, but they would be the one with the gun shooting me. So, and these are people who just, they preach love, and not even Christian love. I'm talking just like hippy-dippy love. And this one guy was like self-proclaimed Jewish, and he was full of shit. He would step on everyone he could, every chance he could get. He would use his childhood trauma against people. He grew up in a house with a heroin addict mom who abused him and like sexually abused him. Her and her friends would sexually abuse him. And it's unfathomable, everyone's life story. And thank God you only have to live your own, because if you had to live another person's life, then you wouldn't want to. You'd probably kill yourself on the spot. And I've been around so many suicidal people in my life, and thank God no one I know has killed themselves. I guess my friend Garrett, who was my friend from the South, her boyfriend, he got kicked out of the military, I think Air Force, because he was suicidal. And he ended up, like when I went down to visit them, I did acid for the first time, and I did 3 droplets, and it was in a alcoholic solution, so it was like heavy shit, and I was not myself. We were out on a dock. We were out on out hanging out, me, him, and another kid. We're hanging out on this dock out at a lake, and they said we had to leave after about 10 minutes of being there, and I was like, we just got here. And they were like, no, we've been here for 3 hours. And so during that time, I was definitely taken over by something, some creature, some entity. And if you don't believe that, then, well, try to make sense of 3 hours versus 10 minutes, you know? And I think that is the moment that I became possessed. Maybe, I don't know if I did mushrooms after that. I think I did it before that. I can't remember, to be honest. But, so that guy, he was doing 8 balls. He was doing heroin and coke and who knows what else. And this other kid too. And, but my friend Garrett, he overdosed and died. I think his girlfriend, my friend, said that he had like 55 different drugs in his system when they found him. So he was dead. He was gone. And I've had an uncle die. I mean, I've had uncles die. I've had, you know, great grandparents die. I've had people die in my life, but when he died, I lost my shit. Like I told you, I was emotional, and I thought that emotions were the key to belief, and I thought they were the key to love, and I thought they were the key to understanding what it means to be human. And funny enough, in Zender's Roman series, he just put it out this last Sunday. It's what does he call it? Volume 5, episode 22, or what, I don't remember what he calls it, but it's 5, like number 5, and then the 22nd version of it. And he talks about how God had to invoke shame on Adam and Eve so that they could understand what it was like to be delighted by God, to have joy. And so to go back to my Jewish friend who would take advantage of people, the heroin addict son, him and I did mushrooms together, and I blacked out for hours, and they said that I was screaming for water, and I know that I was screaming for water for a little bit, but for the most part, I wasn't even there. I wasn't even present, and it was overwhelming. Like, I definitely had spirits over me who were taking advantage of me and coming into my body because I was not conscious. I was not aware, and yeah, I wanted to kill myself that night. That's the only time I've ever wanted to actually kill myself. Like, I was going to do it if no one was going to stop me. And my friend Becca, she's amazing. She was taken advantage of, along with his other 30 some odd girlfriends. He was a fucking horrible person. And he just lies and lies and lies, and he cheats on all of them with ex-girlfriends, because what he does is he manipulates them into believing that he's just this helpless little boy who can't help himself. You know, he's been sexually assaulted growing up. And I could relate to that. I could relate to being sexually assaulted and not knowing what it's like to trust anyone. And he used it as a weapon. But he would tell me that it was my fault that he wanted to kill himself. He would tell me, everyone in this house is depressed because of you. You're the reason that everyone else wants to kill themselves. And you don't make anyone happy. All you ever do is make everyone else sad. And he's like, you don't realize your shit stinks too, right? And I'm just like, what are you talking about? I want to make sure everyone's okay. And he was the opposite. He wanted to make sure everyone was okay at his expense. He wanted to feel better than them. Me, I didn't give a shit if I felt worse. And this is not a comparison of I'm better than him. There's no fucking way. No fucking way. Him and I stopped being friends as my brother and I moved out of this house. It became a trap house pretty much. And it was not comfortable to be there. There were just nonstop people coming through who we didn't know. People were bringing ounces of weed in just to smoke for the night. And it was so I did an acid trip with a couple of dudes in that house. And I would go to this euphoric place where it would feel like I was climaxing, like I was coming nonstop. And it would not stop, and it was mind-blowing, like euphoric high that it was insane. It was like I was pissing my pants nonstop, but it was like climax, and I felt uncomfortable. I got self-conscious about it, and I pulled out of that trip, and I go, am I gay? And I knew in my head that I had been sexually assaulted by a man. And none of these people around me really knew that. One of them did. The other ones, they didn't know that. And so they were making fun of me for hours. And I don't even think they knew that they were making fun of me. I think that subconsciously they were doing it through some deity that had taken over their body. And I'll dive deeper into this in another video, just because this one's getting a little lengthy. I had gone months just not questioning if I was gay, but just worried about it. Like, I've never really been attracted to a man. I mean, sure, I've sucked dick before, but that was because I was molested and I've been taken advantage of. It has nothing to do with my sexual preference. And so my identity, like I said, I had no identity my whole life up until I believed the truth of the gospel. And I would walk around everywhere just so fucking worried that everyone was just thinking I was gay or something. And people would ask me sometimes, just because I'm kind of effeminate, you know, I'm not a super masculine dude. And I had long hair too, whatever. So I was self-conscious as ever. And the people who I was around when that happened, I got uncomfortable as fuck around them, a couple of them, just because they seemed like evil people. They didn't seem like good people that had good intentions. They were all in it for themselves. Let's get high, let's get fucked up, let's do our thing, let's party. And they were like, they came across as heartfelt for a moment, and then they would just shit on you. They would just say things that you're like, you really talk to your friends like that? Like, I didn't even really know you that well for you to be talking to me this way. And you're in my fucking house. I let you come into my house. I let you move into my house. And you're the one talking shit to me. And as you know, God just made communication impossible between us, to the point where I just was like, I'm moving out of here. Fuck you guys. You know? And I want to say like maybe a year before that, I saw Bob Marley's band, The Wailers, a reggae band, and I was on acid. And this is some of the scariest shit that I've ever seen in my life. Is I was on acid, I was tripping, I was having a crazy good time, and I literally got sucked through the red, green, and yellow lights, the Rastafarian lights. I got sucked into the green one, and it's like I was in a shack. I was in a shack in Jamaica, and there was smoke rising. It was like a movie scene, and I could hear their music, and the drummer hit the snare, and it, you know how sometimes in reggae it has like a delay effect, like he hit the snare, and that motherfucker rang for 10 minutes. I swear to God. Like, I said I lasted for 10 minutes, and it was 3 hours the first time I did acid. This was like, he hit the drum once, and it lasted for 10 minutes. Like, the devil will use anything he can to manipulate time and manipulate your understanding of reality so that you feel as uncomfortable as possible. I was having a good time, and then they had just kind of come out on their set, and then I looked around, and I came back out of the trip like I was just me in my body, and I look in front of me, and there are a bunch of people in front of me in this concert just turned around, like going like this, like, and in my head I was thinking like, oh, he's fucked up, he's on drugs, like, fuck that guy, he's on dope. And I was on acid. And so in my head, I'm like running the wormhole back, trying to justify who I am and why I matter, which is fucking insane while you're that far off on drugs around that many people who are probably also on some kind of drug, or just drinking, or, you know, smoking weed or having a good time or whatever it was. And the earthly connection that Bob Marley has across the globe is insane. You think about it, he has affected music greatly. And he is loved by humanity, even the white people that killed him. So I was looking at these people in front of me. I don't think I was seeing people. I think that through acid, these spiritual beings had somehow put in front of me like 20, 30, 40 people who were all turned around, staring at me, laughing and going like this. And they were just, it was something like this. It's like, here's the concert in front of us. I'm the camera, so you are me, And they're all just like, fuck that guy. Just constantly looking over. Just doing that kind of thing. And it was scary as fuck. It's like I was the spectacle and I was the joke of the entire room. I had always wanted to be the class clown growing up, and here I was, the laughing stock of an entire music venue. It was some of the scariest shit that I've ever experienced in my entire life, because I felt like everyone was out to kill me. Everyone, if they got upset, they would kill me. Oh, that's actually not the scariest shit ever. I'll have to put this in the next video. The pivotal night that happened before I came to believe this truth, not the literal night before, but there was one night. I'm gonna run through some memories that you're gonna think, Seth, you are fucking crazy. And guess what? I am. And I'm okay with it, because the memories that I have of this night far exceed a crowd of 40 people being in front of me and turning around and laughing at me. I ended up leaving the venue, and because I felt like there was this looming presence behind me, like this dark figure that was trying to get me. Now, I honestly think it was God. I honestly think it was the Spirit of God. And everyone is scared of it. Everyone is afraid of God. And they don't know what it is. It was just a shadowy figure. It wasn't anything identifiable. And so I ended up leaving the venue. I called my brother. He came and picked me up because he had left and gone home. He had to work the next day. I told my friends, I have to go feed my dog. I have to go home. And they're like, no, you don't. They were fine. Like, they were having a good time. I love those dudes. I've actually done acid with one of them recently, and it was great. Like, I didn't trip at all. I had no visual distortion. I was just purely at peace, and I could, like, feel the love of God. Like, that's all I could think about and meditate on was the love of God. Call me an idiot for doing it. I won't blame you. But, so I've got a couple more drug stories to tell you in this next video, but this is 42 minutes long. I'll let this one go. I ended up going home. I couldn't even trust my dog. I couldn't even trust myself. I thought everyone was out to get me. And that's the fear of no identity. And that's the reality of what it's like to not know the truth. Is sure, you can invest in your family and your friends and your community and your job and whatnot, but at the end of the day, they will all turn their back on you because they don't love you enough to save you, because they cannot save you.